now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Let me say, Hotep, Barakani, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night, and definitely never ever goodbye. I still hate goodbyes from childhood. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I am the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're located at 8916 South Main. We're being hosted by, sharing the building with our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, which has been kind enough to invite us in and made space for us and welcomed us into the fellowship. And they say when the Baptists and the Charismatics get together, there's always going to be shouting in the camp. So we thank God for Dr. Holliness, and we thank God for the fellowship, and we trust that it will only get richer as the time accumulates and goes by. This offering that you are viewing at this time, or whether you're listening to it or actually seeing it, is entitled, its presentation is entitled, It's Time, and it's always time for social justice, and that means we must have environmental justice and economic justice. And so that is what this particular broadcast focuses on. Yes, we preach, but in a different manner, because we realize that we don't live in a vacuum, that all of our pronouncements and all of our preachments or sermons occur within the context of a larger society in which we may are affected, but may not always have the commensurate effect. In other words, we may be more affected by the society or the environment than our ability to in turn influence the society. But that is what we confront all through life. Life is not lived in a vacuum. Jesus wasn't born in a vacuum, and he didn't, of course, grow up in a vacuum. And naturally, when he began his ministry, it was not in an isolated vacuum. He had to be out among the people, out among the society, and there was his immediate society of Israelis, and then there was the other society of the Romans and the Greeks, and of course all of the other ethnicities. All of that was the environment, social environment, in which the gospel was born. So no, we don't live life in a bubble. Now, on the subject of the environment, you have the social environment, but what is also in that geographical environment? What's in the water? What's in the ground? What toxins are you exposed to on a daily basis? All of these impact your health, and all of these impact your growth and your development. And we don't just cater to the question, is it nature or nurture? We know that it is in the environment and in the society. All of these impact the individual person. Wish I could get an amen on that. But that is what we approach in our studies and in our broadcast. We have a belief that there should be reparations for slavery. Yes, from slavery. When we look at the fact that the Harvard University is still profiting off of the photographs or daguerreotypes that they took of a slave named Renty and his daughter Delia, and that they are still selling the book in which those photographs are included for $40, and that you cannot get the rights to those photographs unless you pay money to Harvard University for copyright. Yes, there is room for reparation, and reparations must be realized, must be paid. Yes, real reparations must actually be paid. You're going to have to give somebody some money. Let us remark on our two reparations scriptures. One from the Old Testament, Deuteronomy 15th chapter, picking up the recitation at verse number 12, which says, "And if thy brother, an Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him or her go out free from thee. And when thou sendest them out free from thee, thou shalt not let them go away empty, but thou shalt furnish them liberally out of thy flock and out of thy floor and out of thy winepress. Of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give." That's the kicker. Give. Not loan. Give. Not let them borrow. Give. Not charge them interest. Give. Not let them lease. Give. Not let them rent. Give unto them. Now, in the 6th chapter of Ephesians, which describes the social society of Paul's day and continues to be the most graphic description of society of our day, is picking up the dissertation at verse number 6. It says, chapter 6, verse number 11. It says, "Put on therefore the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." 12. "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." You couldn't find a better definition for the Wells Fargos and the Bank of Americas and the Citicorps and the Citigroups and the Goldman Sachs and that ilk of this world anywhere, because they stand behind the scene, but they affect and impact everything that we do or attempt to do in the society. If we want to go get a permit to protest, the banks and the banking interests and the corporate interests have a say into whether that permit will be permitted, or whether that protest or demonstration may be allowed on that day. So we certainly wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against these systems, these organizations, these corporations, these companies, these CEOs and their ilk and their shareholders and their political cronies that they pander to or that they put in office. How could we have this 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court if it had not been orchestrated behind the scenes by these very powerful principalities and powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in what? High places. Yes, the people who sit high and control our finances, control our environment, control our society, control as much as they can what we think, what we eat, what we go see in the movies, what color clothes are in vogue, and the style of those clothes. Yes, that's principality. That's not flesh and blood, but it is powers, as Paul so aptly defined it. In other words, the system. The system. It is the system. It is systemic racism. It is the ongoing preservation of white supremacy, of the legacy of white supremacy. all over this continent, all over the world, really. And so these things are what we constantly must keep conscious in our minds. It wasn't just that Derek Chauvin placed his neck on George Floyd's neck. No, it was that the entire system of white supremacy that allowed him and condoned him and empowered him. And if it had not been for that poor little girl standing there with that camera, although she was traumatized, she continued to film. They would have gotten away with it, as they always put in their police report when a death has occurred, but they want to minimize it. They said that the defendant suffered a medical emergency. And then we come find out from the video that the medical emergency was caused by the impact of that knee garroting, closing off the flow of air to Mr. Floyd's neck. But again, that's the principality. That's the power, the spiritual wickedness, the rulers of the darkness of this world. And so that is what you and I constantly are impacted by. In the light of Roe v. Wade, I've had to go back and look. There is a young lady that is named Michelle Goodwin, and she wrote a book called Policing the Womb. And come to find out, she had been raped by her father when she was 10 years old, when it had started. And of course, she had to have an abortion in order not to bring forth the progeny of that incest. And notice, if you please, that Alito doesn't say anything about rape or incest. He just completely bypasses those salients when he gives his opinion. And mind you, it is his learned opinion that he is issuing as it relates to women's bodies and what women experience. And he's saying that the child of incest or rape has as much a right to be born as the child of a loving couple, or of a couple who just had a midnight fling, as it were. So these, if you got this type of mentality on the U.S. Supreme Court, I quote to you what Judge Fields said way back in 1948. He says, "Nor can you place any reliance on the decisions of the United States Supreme Court upholding laws requiring, of course this was dealing with segregation of the races, in facilities supplied by local common carriers and schools." Note, he says you cannot put any reliance on the Supreme Court. No, because at the same time that the Supreme Court was ruling, and this was in 1948, same year that they overturned the white primary in Texas, it was clear that just because you are unelected and you were not voted in, but you get on that high court, that everything you say is not right. And of course, that was before Dred Scott. We knew that because the initial members of the Supreme Court were slaveholders, slave owners, landed people who had a very distinct evaluation of themselves, and more importantly, they had a very distinct evaluation of the rest of their society. And quite so, because anyone that was practicing slavery and chattel slavery, then you had to have a justification for this dehumanization of another human being. And so they were anxiously, desperately trying to justify of that slavery. And so even before the Dred Scott decision was announced in 1856, although the case began, I believe, in 1852, and it wasn't decided until 1857, and precipitated the Civil War. But that's the way people who don't have to answer to anybody can behave. Remember, the Supreme Court justices are non-elected. They don't have to run for no office, and they are not. We don't have a chance to vet them. They are appointed by whatever president is in office. And Donald Trump appointed the 3 justices, and McConnell wouldn't let Barack Obama appoint a replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg because he said it was too close to the election. And then the next time they got Miss Barrett, they got Kavanaugh, and Trump put 3 people on there: Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Neil Gorsuch. And so they joined Clarence Thomas and John Roberts and Samuel Alito. And so now you have all of those on the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's why they're overruling Roe v. Wade. Not because when they were interviewed previously as to what their views on, they said that was settled law, that was stare decisis. Some of you might remember, and you don't go back on that law, and we won't revisit. But what are they doing? They're revisiting it. All right. Now, I wanted to touch briefly here on the disparity, healthcare disparity. I mentioned this back in, I think 2017 or 2018. The case originated in the death of a young woman, healthy, who had no previous conditions, who had a prior successful pregnancy and delivery at Cedars-Sinai. But this one, her husband said, I was very concerned about Kira's well-being. Her husband was named Charles Johnson IV. And he said, I was very concerned about Kira's well-being. I was concerned by the lack of prompt medical attention. Now, let me give you the background right quick. She had a successful delivery, okay? Okay, but now, you don't just get the mother up and then send her home. But her husband noticed that her catheter bag began to fill up with blood. So he called the attention of the nurse. Look, nurse, my wife's catheter bag is filling up with blood. Something ain't right. All right. They said, okay, well, we know what to do. Don't worry about it. And so they said they ordered a CAT scan, CT scan. Well, you got to do a CAT scan right away. Well, 2 hours went by. 2 more hours went by. 2 more hours went by. Her husband says that by the time they got her out of the bed and wheeled her back into the operating room, 7 hours had gone by. If you're viewing this, just count 7 hours from now. And you're standing there watching your wife's blood fill up the catheter bag, and the nurses are coming in that, taking that catheter bag out, true enough, and they're putting another catheter bag, but they're not dealing with the cause of the bag getting full of blood. Excuse me. But anyway, long story short, she died because the husband was unable to get the nurses and the doctors to respond alertly to his wife's condition until it was too late. And by the time they wheeled her back into the operating room, she had lost too much blood. And so as a result, he filed a lawsuit, he being Charles Johnson, on behalf of his wife, Kira Johnson. And the plaintiff, of course, is, the defendant is Cedar Sinai. And he says, I waited and I waited hour after hour by her side as my wife slowly bled to death. I say all of that because we have a wide health disparity, in health outcome between black women with the insurance and all of this type of stuff, but yet they still, with all that insurance, they can't get the care that they need. They can't get treated like human beings. They get dismissed, as it were, or ignored. And as a result, this man watched his wife bleed to death before his very eyes. Now, one aside, women make better ombudsmen than men, because they're not going to sit there and play, Gentile and Johnny Goodenough, you know what. They're going to make some noise. They're going to make a lot of noise. They're going to almost get put out of that hospital. Because if they see you going through that loss of blood, they're not going to take it. They're not going to just sit there, all right, I'm going to be quiet. I ain't going to say nothing. I'm going to be a good gentleman. I'm going to be a good lady. And no, they're going to say something. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say on that. This happened in March 3rd, 2016. And they're trying to get a settlement this year of 2022 in Superior Court. I wasn't able to pull up the case because I didn't have the full case number. All right. Now, next thing I want to tell you before I get out of here is Harvard is confronting its slavery past. I don't know how many of you have a copy of that book, Ebony and Ivy, which means Ebony being the black folks and Ivy being the Ivy League colleges. You know, all those colleges were started by slaveholders, and they were the beneficiaries of slavery. And a lot of people that helped on that campus after that campus was built, well, the slaves were being held in slavery. And Harvard was no different, and it was no better. Matter of fact, all of these prominent Ivy League schools got their start in the slave trade. And no matter how they try to sugarcoat it and try to make it say, well, we didn't know. Yeah, they did, because the plantation owners are the ones that got together to start these various universities or colleges, because they were sending their children overseas to Europe to be educated at Oxford and the Sorbonne and all like that. So they said, we need to start some universities and colleges here, because our children can get benefit, and we can get professors and teachers and to come in and tutor our children. And so that's how Harvard University was started. It was started by slave owners, started by slave holders, for the fact of the education of their children. And one of the professors there was Louis Agassiz. And he was from Switzerland. And he was one of these fellows that in those days they were always trying to prove that the people from Africa were inferior to the people from Europe. That's when you got the development of white supremacy around that time. Remember, Columbus supposedly discovered America in 1492. So now you're talking 1676, the establishment of Harvard. Harvard University. Anyway, this fellow, Louis Agassiz, he commissioned a photographer. At that time, they didn't have this type of photography we have now. They had the old type, was the dog aerial type. Man had to hold up a big, bright thing and then put his head up under the camera, and then you'd see a puff of smoke, and then the resulting image was on a daguerreotype. You can look that up for your own self. But anyway, they had Mr. Renty and his daughter Delia to strip down, and if you look at, you can see the whip marks on the back of Mr. Renty. Well, anyway, one of his great granddaughters has been trying to get possession of those photographs, but she can't get them because Harvard owns them. They're still benefiting from slavery, and so she filed a lawsuit about 3 years ago, and this year Harvard is trying to get ahead of the lawsuit and of course protect the brand and protect the image. And so what they're doing is they're saying that they are setting aside $100 million. Now remember, Harvard has a $53 billion with a B dollar endowment, but yet they're going to set aside $100 million to address the effects of slavery. Now, what is that about? Well, that's just that's PR, public relations. They know they're on the hook, and they know they own the copyrights on that of the picture of Mr. Renty and the picture of Miss Delia, and they know that they're not going to give that up, because that's, like I told you at the beginning, $40 a book. If their pictures are in a Harvard book, that book sells for $40. They're still profiting off of slavery. That's why I tell you we got to have reparation, because we're still being exploited. All right, my time is up. Thank God somebody is suing Wells Fargo for their discriminatory housing practices. You remember originally that the real estate brokers have drawn up this what you call a residential covenant, restrictive covenant, that said we will not sell this house to any black person, the we being the white people, and so they did not, and that's why the housing conditions are as they are all across this nation and around the world. And so Wells Fargo is being put on blast by the newly elected mayor of New York for, his name is Eric Adams, for their discriminatory practices. I thank God that is happening. All right, so now I think I've covered everything I got on this piece of paper. so I want you to stay tuned, keep an eye on things, and keep praying, be prayerful. And we got so many union movements to try to get unions in places like Starbucks and other places, because the man ain't gonna do right unless you have a collective power. If you got collective power, then you can more or less make him do right. At least he'll try to tell you he's doing right. And so as I wrap up, keep the pressure on. Try to get as much money as you can for your labor, because once you get your labor out there, you can't get it back. And remember, if working hard would make you rich, every slave would have been at least a millionaire coming out of slavery. All right, so if you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you, what you need to do is don't work for them. Thank you, Doc. We out of here.